Let us execute an immediate, comprehensive analytical vector shift away from standard tranquil composition registries, quiet character pamphlets, and peaceful boilerplate literary reviews, and plunge straight into the high-octane, calculation-heavy tracking grids of fortified regional isolation traps, weaponized instinct engagement loops, and the fiercely protective, dangerously fragile world of an endangered collection of raw operational survival and razor-sharp procedural recovery networks running a raw tactical survival loop. We are crossing the threshold directly into the hyper-monitored, paranoia-slicked parameters of an intricate tactical maze, an advanced carceral trauma control domain, and deep anomalous correctional institution syndicate power architecture, exploring the lethal analytical parameters of a devastating, multi-layered structural reconstruction and tracking matrix with The River is Waiting, the exceptional, pulse-pounding contemporary dual-narrative psychological romantic fantasy tactical instruction manual and comprehensive baseline endurance compendium, selected as an absolute cornerstone operational priority by the ultimate global taste-making media empire, Oprah's Book Club, and engineered by the absolute undisputed global sovereign of breathtaking literary secrets, razor-sharp narrative traps, and high-velocity structural friction, Wally Lamb. This high-stakes narrative tracking sequence delivers an exceptional look at an operational crossroads where an endangered primary investigative asset running an unyielding truth extraction loop, a calculating, manipulative shadow network of an elite localized maximum security conspiracy, and an absolute defense against an encroaching, memory-confined psychological erasure containment zone collide at terminal velocity. Let us map the strategic narrative grid. If you are an elite enthusiast of high-octane, slow-burn creative journeys where endangered, hyper-observant protective author protagonists must navigate an absolute maze of rigged aesthetic perspectives, corrupt identity dossiers, and forbidden ancestral files, and a deadly ring of active personal deadline frame-ups while running a blind survival loop inside a completely compromised correctional facility ecosystem stretching to the isolated, grief-shrouded parameters of New England, where an analytical mind uses deep psychological profiling, calculated tactical rescue boundaries, and absolute emotional stamina to outmaneuver an invisible predatory executioner asset, weaponizing highly advanced combat ambush timing and dark generational cover-up mechanics, and where the author utilizes an incandescent, meticulously paced, locked-in studio enclave incubator, tracking a vulnerable trauma survivor and a scarred literary partner who deploy advanced procedural analysis and clandestine corporate alliances to systematically forge a seemingly impenetrable defense before crossing a terminal exposure milestone diagnostic routine to test our hero's structural limits. This book is engineered to lock you in. Wally Lamb completely dominates the high-precision, unreliable witness jeopardy meets suffocating narrative erasure puzzles dynamic, capturing the heart-racing intellectual momentum, suffocating blank-page paranoia, and heavy deductive depth popularized by global dark mythic speculative progression mystery suspense syndicates and high-density isolation extraction grids with absolute technical mastery. The narrative tracking grid zeroes in on the highly volatile, calculation-heavy baseline of our central legendary powerhouse creative asset, operating under a severe calculation-heavy handicap of a total loss of original systemic narrative control, absolute structural bloodline liquidation logs, and a completely shattered urban tracking canvas within a cutthroat, power-ravaged systemic matrix. Behind his rigorous daily footprints, defensive conversational shields, and sharp observation metrics lies an intricate matrix of hidden structural vulnerabilities, deeply buried survival instincts, and sharp, high-stakes tactical maneuvers. His internal defense mechanisms are locked down tight following an abrupt plot outline deviation sequence, struggling to survive an ongoing internal validation event while managing a shocking series of counterintuitive statistics update reports. His entire analytical focus strictly consumed by monitoring sudden threat vectors from a rogue algorithmic lineage and corrupt global clandestine executioner collective inside the institutional mainframe, parsing complex behavioral shifts in his daily multi-timeline interaction loops, and shielding his vulnerable personal sovereignty nodes from being entirely wiped out by a ruthless, high-level technological profiling offensive. The spark ignites when an unexpected high-frequency structural anomaly breaches his active scanning parameter. While sorting through a series of routine daily operational constraints inside a highly monitored, shadow-veiled refuge, specifically the high-stakes, data-swept corridors of automated domestic registries, the shifting, branching timelines of a pill-induced addiction defense zone, and the lethal domains governed by the sovereign justice syndicate elite, our primary asset, Corby Ledbetter, registers a total security breach when an irregular distribution protocol pulls him down the rabbit hole, and a newly deployed tactical tracking infrastructure initializes an irregular descent into active regional misconduct logs, systematically tracking hidden classification profiling metrics, forbidden domestic optimization secrets, and unvetted deep state structural cover-up associations after an unimaginable driveway tragedy leaves his marriage shattered, forcing him into an impossible proximity tracking matrix with an oncoming narrative resolution. Behind the glamorous empire's pristine, high-gloss, high-concept literary family drama romance thriller mystery aesthetic majesty and elite tracking style lies an intricate matrix of severe ideological warfare and a cold, calculation-heavy target containment blueprint. As the hostile adversarial investigation phases enter an increasingly lethal terminal tier across a ticking clock timeline inside the isolated cell block dark zones and the conflict-shattered prison walls, the unauthorized discovery of missing historical truth templates, hidden intimate internal motivations, and altered tracking templates reveals that his entire localized sanctuary was an explicitly engineered trap. The standard boundaries of routine industry courtesy and peaceful professional compliance protocols crumble, and our central protagonist runs completely out of standard diplomatic escape vectors. He is thrust directly into an active, invisible war behind closed doors during an isolated tactical asset showdown, where a highly manipulative psychological gaslighting matrix launches aggressive countermeasures to permanently suppress his survival data stream and execute his complete systemic erasure. The tactical parameters instantly explode as his social and survival warfare turns completely active, transforming the large dynamic tracking centers, isolated simulation strongholds, and private fortified extraction rooms into a volatile psychological pressure cooker and a physical battle zone. Our protective, hyper-vigilant hero, the brilliant, deeply calculating Corby, navigating a hazardous involuntary manslaughter frame-up, his fiercely possessive, cold yet captive defense partner Emily within the suspicious outside hierarchy, and the calculating masterminds pulling the strings of a deadly institutional asset liquidation squad, is forced to deploy his massive intuitive tradecraft, elite behavioral mapping skills, and raw physical stamina to preserve his focus before his adversary's relentless calculation-heavy proximity containment phase permanently deletes his boundaries. The threat vector remains purposeful and resolute, shifting dynamically through precise execution guidelines from initial tactical disclosures to final high-stakes perimeter confrontation loops across multiple unreliable points of view and toxic institutional standoffs, determined to deploy deep sensory manipulation loops, continuous automated gaslighting via environmental and structural distraction maneuvers, and persistent dominance to shatter his defense, finding unlikely salvation in a saintly prison librarian and a fragile young inmate node named Solomon. Every midnight archival excavation of ancient tradecraft, every silent choice to stand off against an obsessed ruling collective, and the ruthless corrupt forces carve correctional resources with ease behind standard structural barriers, and every intense moment of weaponized environmental adaptation to execute a raw, unyielding joint survival mechanic chips away at his reliance on original peaceful rules. What follows is an exceptional high-stakes war of perspective, tactical position, and raw human grit. We watch the Predator Network's deceptive perimeters completely unwrapped as Wally Lamb reveals that the true victory requires more than just surviving an initial Week 1 ambush or managing an invasive departmental disclosure. It demands an absolute, uncompromising defense of individual dignity, personal truth, and systemic survival against a cold, calculating machine of regional manipulation and absolute structural supremacy. While our central characters smooth over each other's psychological and defensive blind spots with devastating analytical force, creating a fiercely protective, absolute web of operational loyalty around their building creative survival alliance, a brutal series of close-quarters tactical confrontations, and a high-stakes, multi-timeline point-of-view shift switches the clock into its terminal phase, proving that deep-seated obsession has tracked them to their final outpost. To survive the impending locked grid trap and permanently secure their sanctuary, our resilient protagonists must unleash an absolute, unyielding defense of their final boundary lines. It is a high-velocity operational strategy, carceral, psychological, multi-timeline counter-surveillance noir, deep-state systemic injustice conspiracy mystery, high-velocity multi-POV syndicate intrigue puzzle masterpiece that treats deep relational logistics and intense structural friction with elite precision. The tension here burns with a sharp, calculation-heavy intensity. We are talking about that high-frequency, one unreliable witness lie triggers a fatal deadline showdown energy, where a sudden pause during an active franchise tactical briefing, an unexpected shift in an adversary's protective physical posture during a high-stakes standoff confrontation, or a heavy automated realization that the supreme tracking matrix has completely mapped your personal coordinates, carries massive structural weight. The author writes with an exceptionally fresh, vivid, and beautifully blunt voice, perfectly capturing the heavy, oppressive atmosphere of a private executive vault before a major corporate fallout, and the distinct, subtle scent of magnetic master tapes, old paper archives, smartphone glare, cold sweat, dark adrenaline, and pure, unadulterated technological shadows, visceral asset lines, and possessive predator tracking lines. What truly elevates this contemporary instructional marvel into elite territory is Wally Lamb's unmatched ability to balance complex, high-stakes relationship dynamics and genuine protective power tradecraft alongside a breathtaking narrative pace and deep emotional hooks.
Our protagonists don't rely on unbelievable, superficial Hollywood superhero action tropes. Their immense situational intelligence, strategic patience, and profound survival instincts match the complexity of the chaotic modern underworld they dominate step for step, making their choices to risk everything feel profoundly authentic and deeply gripping. The pacing moves with calculated momentum, tracking intense conversational standoffs and breathtaking tactical breakthroughs, before ratcheting up to an absolute jaw-dropping conclusion that delivers total, hard-earned advancement to their horizon. The River is Waiting is the definitive pro-level upgrade your high-stakes contemporary thriller and intense asset suspense library demands right now. It is elegant, immensely fast-paced, and utterly unput-downable. It proves that when your entire sanctuary is targeted by a cold, calculating institutional monster, the most revolutionary play you can execute is to lock your perimeters, trust your elite survival timing, and fight like hell alongside your network to rewrite the data. So, secure your personal reading sanctuary, review your emotional defensive perimeters, open your Kindle, and prepare to track